BioBite 2. To screen or not to screen? Welcome back to Under the Microscope. Today's question: would you like to know if you have cancer? You may have seen the recent media pushes by outreach charities such as Bowel Cancer UK, Breast Cancer Awareness or Cancer Research to increase attention and access to early screening interventions such as mammograms and other diagnostic scans to catch cancers earlier. They claim this causes a 40% reduction in cancer death rates, as well as a better quality of life and chance of remission. On the surface, catching a cancer at an earlier stage surely does look like the difference between life and death. From celebrities discussing their health scares to activists raising awareness for early screening, catching cancer earlier really does seem like a logical net positive. If you catch it earlier, it's likely that the treatments will be cheaper, more effective, and less painful. This is better for the patient, their family, their community, and the economy. It really does look like a win-win. However, most of the people who have early screening aren't symptomatic and don't have risk factors such as a family history or smoking. This means that our tests aren't quite doing what we intend them to do, and actually this means that we delve into the murky waters of early screening protocols. For cancers that we do have the statistics to back up the efficacy of these early screening programs, such as in the UK we have the National Bowel, Uterine, Cervical and Breast Cancer Screening, these can be very useful measures. However, even these are age-gated. Now the tests for these tend to be quite non-invasive, cheap, easy, or at least relative to other cancers such as leukemia and a bone marrow test. However, we found that when we shift to a distribution of younger patients being tested, the rates of false positive increase so much that it is no longer useful health information, and most people may have an abnormal finding, and we don't know how this will develop later on, with 1 in 3 cases of HPV-looking cells under a microscope pathology on a pap smear for those under the age of 25 tend to clear up on their own instead of progressing into cancers. You see, the issue with early screening is that it shifts from are these tests showing us that you have cancer or not, to how likely is it that the tests showing us that you have cancer are a true positive and the tests showing us that you don't are a true negative. This runs into the specificity versus sensitivity problem. In a test, for it to be accurate, specificity is if it can detect a true positive. If you actually have the disorder or the trait, then it shows you that you have the disorder or the trait. However, it also has to be sensitive. It needs to detect a true negative. If you don't have the disorder, it's not useful if the test says that you do. For example, I could probably write an algorithm with an 100% specificity rate. I mean, it detects every single case of cancer. However, it does so by just saying everyone has cancer. So now we are back to square one, and even worse, because we don't know who actually has cancer, we don't know who has symptoms, who needs treatment, we just treat everyone. We've run out of money, we've subjected everyone to painful treatment, and really these tests are a waste of time, money, and so much pain for the patients and their community. Most early screening programs just tend to be too vague. We don't know if the patient sat in front of us has a true positive, a false positive, a true negative, a false negative, and these tests aren't just indiscriminate. It's because of the distribution and the fact that cancers are age-related that means that when we screen people who are over a certain age, it is more statistically probable that the result that we get is true to their current cancer status. However, younger people are also encouraged to be screened, but not on a blind basis. Usually this is because of risk factors such as smoking, symptoms, or a family history. These tests are not designed as a blanket way to see if someone has cancer or not. It is not binary. Instead, these tests tend to give us a better picture of what's going on when a patient comes into a healthcare space saying that they have certain symptoms. Especially since cancer is not actually an entity that we can just say, yes, it's here, or no, it's not. You see, your cells divide at different rates, and cancer is uncontrolled cell division. But how do we know if something is a cancerous cell or just a normal human cell? More so, if it's a cancerous cell, your immune system may get rid of it, especially if you're younger. We don't know if it'll progress, and even if it does, it may be a benign tumour, it may never spread, it may never cause symptoms, and we may have never even known about it without any scans or screening. Instead, now you have this very vague question. You have no idea if this may be harmful and you need to have diagnostics and treatment, or if the diagnostics and treatments themselves will bring you more harm, and there is no right answer here. Cancer is one of the leading causes of death in high-income countries, but the narrative may be changing from dying from cancer to living with cancer. For example, many studies have found that in the UK and the US, 21% of men who die at an old age from natural causes will have undiagnosed prostate cancer. They wouldn't have symptoms, and they wouldn't necessarily have died directly from the disease or indirectly from the treatments to the disease. And another study, with albeit a slightly niche sample size of car crash victims, found that 1 in 8 autopsies of healthy people who displayed no symptoms or issues that they reported had cancerous cells and tumours inside them. Now, we don't know if these would have progressed into something harmful or if they would have stayed as they were, as most cancerous tumours cannot easily be identified. And even if we're certain that you have tested positive for cancer, or at least have a cancer-like growth on your scan, what do we do with this information? As previously mentioned, we don't know if this will grow or cause you symptoms. We don't know how it will change with time. We don't know if treatments will advance, so we should wait or we should act now. We don't know how you'll tolerate the diagnostics and treatment. And chemotherapy is basically monitored dosages of poisons that kill indiscriminately dividing cells. So of course, this is a very, very painful thing to go through. Furthermore, especially if you have other comorbid diagnoses or you're older in age, then it may not be worth it to have something like chemotherapy. Instead, palliative care to deal with the symptoms and pain may be more recommended by your healthcare team. And treatments for certain cancers can increase the risk of others, the double-edged sword. Same for, in very, very niche cases, bone marrow transplants or biopsies can increase metastases. So once again, nothing is black and white. There is no such thing as do no harm in early screening, because what you're really doing is weighing up the balance between how many people will be harmed if we find it versus how many people will be harmed if we don't find it versus how many people will be harmed because we found something that wasn't there to begin with. Now, of course, this debate has been here for decades, and these screening programs may have changed in age, risk factors, or the way that they're introduced, but I think some form of early screening is here to stay. However, what really makes this topic pertinent today is the rise of for-profit companies who are preying on vulnerable patients, especially on alarmist disorders such as cancer, attempting to give them a black and white answer to a topic that no amount of clinicians, researchers, and policymakers have even begun to unravel. Before, whether to test you or treat you for cancer or another disorder was a conversation between a patient, their family, their community, and their clinicians. In a healthcare setting where their risk factors and their history can be discussed, they can discuss what they want from life, whether they want to go through these horrible treatments and diagnostics, whether they want certainty or whether they just want to live their life without knowing more. However, now it has been taken out of the hands of patients and their agency has been stripped from them by companies out looking to make a quick buck instead of looking at the overall insight into a patient's health and well-being. There are many services, which I will not name, who are offering full-body MRI scans when you're asymptomatic and other huge panels of tests, and putting around bogus claims such as full-body inflammation or toxic foods or superfoods or cancer-causing drugs. All of these things lack the nuance that is needed in science communication, but especially with the rise of AI, misinformation, social media spread, there is no way that we can stay silent any longer. People's lives are already at stake. If we did a full body scan, it's likely we'd find hundreds of abnormalities. However, I don't know if these are something that you were born with. This could just be you. This could just be something that stays like this. Is it harmful? Is it benign? Will it go away on its own? And if you had symptoms, then it could point us in the right direction for what to treat. But if you had no symptoms, then we have no way of knowing whether this is something to follow up on. Whether you want to go through diagnostics or treatments, the for-profit companies who first offered these interventions that were unneeded and weren't discussed with trained healthcare professionals don't know what to do with the diagnosis. They just put you onto an overstretched healthcare system, such as the NHS in the UK, which now not only has a higher caseload, but more worryingly a higher caseload of false positives, whilst some true negatives may be skipped, especially since these things are for profit, so it further increases the wealth disparity in those who have access to diagnostics. So once again, more strain on the health system, you are spending money out of pocket, you are preying on the vulnerable who are so scared of getting sick. And in the meantime, you are just making it more likely that they will go through invasive emotional, physical, and mental harm, whilst not actually reducing their risk of diseases and disorders. You can see now how the water is very murky when it comes to companies trying to sell something that they claim will help you stay healthy. Now, I won't name specific entities, but any company, influencer, or brand selling you something that begins with whole body inflammation, cancer-causing food, toxic food, never eat this, or superfood, this one trick cures all diseases, none of them are right. There is so much nuance, and many studies that have been going on for decades still haven't found answers to even what looks like simple issues. If whole countries worth of healthcare systems, researchers and scientists and patients are working on it, don't you think we would have realized if there was one simple thing you could do to change your likelihood of living a healthy life? Now, the reason that these full-body scams and these other for-profit initiatives such as detoxing or toxic food diaries are so successful is because the healthcare system hasn't done a very good job at ensuring that voices are heard. However, this only perpetuates the for-profit disparity. It means that healthcare systems are just much more strained with patients who are probably a false positive, whilst true positive patients are swept away because they don't have access to scans. One snapshot of a full body scan or a blood test will never give you the answers. Health is so much more nuanced, and although the foundational principles still remain, such as a healthy sleep schedule, good dietary patterns, and habits of regular activity, these really are patterns. They accumulate over your lifetime. One choice does not make you healthy or unhealthy. One drug, one exercise, one routine, one food, none of these cause cancer, none of these let you live to 100 years. There is no one answer, no one is the same. More so, anyone selling you books, courses, detoxes, supplements, anything on media in a parasocial relationship with no medical training and no knowledge and insight into your own personal situation definitely does not have your best interest at heart. And more importantly, it only perpetuates the idea that everyone should be able to live a healthy life and modify all their risk factors, spending all of their time picking the healthiest foods, always exercising, when in actuality humans aren't perfect. We can't avoid everything. Disease isn't always in our control. Diseases and disorders can be influenced by environment, genetics, history, socioeconomic factors, and there is no one thing that you can change to protect yourself. Instead, you can have discussions with healthcare professionals such as doctors, GPs, nurses, family health doctors, to ensure that what you are able to change is something that you can work on. I hope you enjoyed this quick bio bite about screening, and now realize that the dichotomy of knowledge is power and ignorance is bliss both coexist in the healthcare system, especially when it comes to early diagnostics and intervention. You should keep having discussions with clinicians, researchers, scientists, and your own healthcare team to figure out how to minimize harm and improve your quality of life so that it can look more like how you want it to be. And please, 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 if you take one thing away from this, is do not take medical advice from strangers on the internet. It does not matter if they are wearing a white coat, if they say that they're a doctor. It does not matter if they say that they have found the cure to all disease and cancer. I promise you, you will not find the answers to how to live a better life, to be happier and healthier from a TikTok, a social media post, or a book that they are selling for their own profit, because they really, really, really do not take into account the nuance when it comes to things that really do, on the surface, look like the simplest question of all. Because really, the question that we were answering today, we still haven't found the answer to. And that question is, would you like to know if you have cancer?